A big mabuhay around the world, and welcome back to the channel. I hope everyone is doing great. I hope the COVID thing is dying down where you are, and our prayers and wishes go out to everyone in the Philippines. We know in central Luzon and Manila and the surrounding area that the lockdown is still going on. Hopefully it gets lifted by May 1st. Hopefully it just goes away. I was looking at the case numbers today. It seems a little bit high. Hopefully things progress though, and hospitalizations go down and things can return to normal. I was kind of shocked. I know I saw like 1 million displaced restaurant workers in the Metro Manila area, I believe, probably. So my heart really goes out to them, and I know people are really struggling, and I just hope things get better. Right now, the topic that I wanted to cover today is really about love. And to sort of pick our spirits up, let's talk about something that we all wish for, the thing that we really need. As the Beatles say, all we need is love, right? So, excuse me. One of the questions, that's one of the big questions, especially for international dating and especially for dating with women in the Philippines. It's a controversial topic. It's always on YouTube. It's always there. And you get these wars going back and forth. And this is not just between the foreigners. It's between the Filipinos and the Filipinas and the families and how people feel towards it. And my desire here tonight, or my intent here tonight, is not to cause controversy, but to go over perhaps why it's controversial and what gets people so upset about discussing it. And it just strikes a nerve with people. You know, they get upset by it. And that topic is, tune in next week. No, just kidding. Do Filipinas really date older men and marry older men? Sincerely. You know, not just for the money. In the last sort of episode, we talked about scammers and this, that, and the other. And we had some comments, and people said, well, you have to build a relationship first, you know, a sort of a trust first, one of the comments was. And that's true. You know, you have to build a rapport, you know, the old-fashioned word rapport, you know, that you have a relationship or an understanding, a foundation, I think was the term that was used. And of course, that's with all relationships, you have to do that. But as we were going through it, this came to my mind because it's always a controversial topic. And is there an answer for this? I mean, is it legit? Do people have a right to get upset by it? And how do people feel, right? So let's take a look at it and see if I can kind of unravel this without a hailstorm or like firing or like people getting angry at each other, you know, people going crazy about it or getting some mean comments or something like that. That's not my intention. My intention is to really understand it, and if it's real, you know, and if so, why? And if not, why not? Right? So let's go to it. So, you know, if you go on the internet, you know, you can sort of pick up these things, these articles. And this was an interesting article I came across. It's from California. Lots of Filipinos in California. But this guy happened to get divorced. And like a lot of older men, in this case, you know, it really isn't older women going to the Philippines looking for Filipinos. It's mainly older men. And I don't think that trend has really stopped or changed or, you know, kind of anything like that, you know. I know as a kid, people would, sometimes you'd hear about, you know, European marriages and older men and younger women in Europe. You know, I was a history teacher, so, you know, in American society, you know, out west or, you know, maybe on the frontier, there would be marriages between older men and younger women. But not usually, because there weren't too many women really on the frontier. But I'm sure it did happen. to provide security and understanding. And of course, those days, cohabitation required that you were married. And that kind of drifts us back a little bit to our topic here. So this guy, unfortunately, he had a midlife crisis or whatever, who knows. And he said that, it was his fault. His marriage ended. I guess he was in his 40s. And he was just devastated. He didn't know what was going to happen. After he got divorced, his life was meaningless. And when he tried to get back into dating, and I think this is a reason a lot of Americans get upset. They're like, why are you marrying a foreign woman? And, from a male perspective, and I can speak about that, when I got married, I was 35. Or was I a little older? 36? I don't even know. I can't even remember. But I was like in my mid-30s. And I was out there dating, and I really didn't have a desire to really get married or really get involved, heavily, until I was in my 30s. And all of a sudden, it was like a thunderstruck. I was like, man, I got to get married. I got to do this. It was like feeling like my life was swiftling away. And so I took it really seriously. And so I was dating in places like that. And went out there. I lost a lot of weight. I was out there buying Tommy Hilfiger. I was buying American Eagle, buying all this stuff. And, man, I just couldn't find anybody. It was rough. And it wasn't just rough for me, as, if I can, sort of relate a little bit, go back to the article in a second. I kind of got my gab on here. It was frustrating. And this is what this guy is talking about. He's like, I went through this series of relationships and no one seemed to really care. And that's what I'd hear from other guys like, yeah, things have changed, And, I'm not trying to make a judgment on American women or not. I'm not doing that. I'm just saying that's the reality. People are taking the relationships more casually. Is that good or bad? Listen, that's for those people to decide. It's not up to me, okay? All I know is there's a lot of men out there, probably a lot of women, that want to connect, and the culture just doesn't have that. So I know what this guy is talking about, but I wasn't in my 50s. I was like in my 30s. And eventually, I just gave up on dating American women, and I just said, they're not serious, and I'm not, I just want to have a family. I want to get moving on this. I wanted to have a family and move on with my life, and I don't want to be playing games or waiting for people to decide what's going to happen. And that's what happened to him. So he was just like feeling bad about going out and things like that. And finally, he started with his Filipino hearts. I think it has it here on the website, somewhere in this article. So this is from Orange County, California. And the article is pretty funny because he has parties, with his Filipino friends, or, they have interracial marriages or whatever, Americans and Filipinos. They have parties, and the police get called because their parties are too loud or something. Who knows? But the woman didn't like the fact he was married to a younger woman. And so maybe she was getting back at him at this, whatever. So the article talks about this, and he met this Filipina, and they dated for 2 years. Got married. She was 24. He was struck at how mature she was. And that's one of the things that, we see in Filipino culture and society is that, you grow up quick because you have to survive. But also you grow up quicker because, you know what you want. And so, the Filipino culture, because it's more traditional, they will say, what are your intentions? And listen, this guy talks about he went over there and they put him through the Inquisition as soon as he got there. And that happened to me too. I got over there, and I've been talking to my wife for like 6-7 months, and I said, I'm going to be there. I'm going to see you. I'm coming. I'm not, BSing you. And I got there, and then we went to her house, and her friends grilled me. Man, it was the Inquisition. It was like I was on trial, man. And they sat there, and I was like, whoa. They're serious about their friendships over there. And that's what this guy was talking about. And so he goes through it, and he said, what's important? And she goes, love can be established. What's important is the person is trustworthy. They asked him about his former marriage, this, that, and the other. And now he happened to be in his 50s, I guess, and she was in her 20s, so it was a big difference. And as he went through built this relationship up, he found out that, yeah, it is real. that it is a possibility for a younger woman and an older man. And we see this, in the Philippines, and some people are angered by this and some aren't. Now, he went on to have a kid, and we're going to talk about that in a few seconds, why it's important, I think, if you're going to choose to be involved with a Filipina. And, why these relationships happen, okay? Now, one reason, I was reading, some other things on the internet and things like that, and one of the reasons is because, Filipinas want to get married. It is a status symbol for them. Now, what I mean status, it doesn't mean that they're trying to upgrade their status, but they don't want to stay single. And for those women that are very, that are conservative and traditional Filipinas, they don't want to have relationships outside of marriage. It'll be deemed illegitimate. They don't want that. Now, I've seen younger and younger single moms in the Philippines. And listen, I'm not there to judge them either, okay? That's their deal. But that is changing in the Philippines too. So things are changing. And I've been married like 13 years. So, if I would have went back 13 years ago, there were a lot less single mothers, at least, that were sort of identifying themselves as single mothers. Because I know now you see a lot of single mothers marrying a lot of American men and foreigners. And the foreigners, they don't really care because their culture doesn't really have a negative thought about that. But in the Philippines, most men would not do that. They're not going to marry a single mom. They're not going to do that. Like I said, I'm not here to judge. I'm just saying what the reality is, right? So, you see a lot of, that's good. I guess it's great for the single moms, because in their own culture, they're, sort of discriminated against, and so Americans and foreigners don't really care about that. So that might be one reason you see these younger moms marrying older men, right? They want someone to take care of them and their children. You have single girls that are college graduates, and there's not a lot of, husband material out there. And they're certainly not going to marry below them. Now, my wife has, I've been hearing stories, not stories, but it's reality. Sometimes they marry someone who's not a college graduate, but they don't want to do that. They don't want to do that because it taints their status and their reputation. It's very hard for them to do that. And there's not a lot of college men. So you have to get married, right after college. Okay? And if you don't, you're going to miss that guy. And so there's lots of single women that are college graduates and are not married, for that reason. And so they might look for an older man in the U.S., and they know the older man, if he's sincere and has a house and a car, that they'll be able to take care of their family. More importantly, these Filipinos are also doing it for their family. So they can help their family and they can get a job and then eventually maybe bring their parents over or something like that. And so people are going, oh, it's a scam. It's a scam. They're just doing it to get over here. No, they're not. They love that person sincerely. And I have to say, of course, I went over to one of the other great journalistic sites on the internet. I'm being sarcastic. Is Quora, but Quora sometimes has good stuff. And there, you see a lot of this stuff. Why do young Filipino women marry older white men? And there's all kinds of things in here. And then there's stories of, the Filipino left the husband and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it happens. But by and large, a lot of the women do stay with the older men. And you see this, there was a guy, unfortunately, on YouTube who was very old and had really bad health conditions in the Philippines. This was before the pandemic. And he died, and he was very sick. They weren't even married. And his girlfriend took care of him, took him to the hospital, helped, didn't abandon him, did not abandon him. And that is because of the Catholic culture, of the family culture, because Filipinas, most of them have a heart, they have values, and they fall in love with the person they're with. And, I'm going to say it, people are probably going to get angry at me, there's not a lot of love in the U.S. right now. Is there love? Yes, there is. There is. There's no doubt there is. But, marriage, we seem, nowadays we seem to want to criticize our ancestors, to criticize our relatives and say, oh, they got married, they stayed in marriage and they weren't happy, blah, blah, blah. You know, oh, they just had a few kids and that's all they did with their lives. You know, once upon a time, you know, a marriage that lasted was deemed with great respect. A mother and father who raised 2 or 3 kids was you know, sort of a cornerstone of that neighborhood, that family, that society. And we seem to be valuing money more, reputation more, status with cars and money. You know, my grandparents didn't have a lot of money. Okay? You know, as a kid, you know, my father, you know, he had a little bit of money, but I never got a lot of expensive things. You know, but my grandparents, they sacrificed everything for their kids. And, you know, these things, like, it was something that you have to earn or respect, or you didn't need all these things. And, you know, now we have all these things, but we're missing our families. And that's the one thing I think that people don't really understand, is this idea of love, you know, between a man and a woman that want to have this relationship. And so, you know, we have a lot of lonely people in the U.S. We have lonely people in the Philippines, and all they're asking for is reciprocal love and happiness. And many times it is fulfilled, right? But so, yeah, obviously people leave. There's divorce. And, you know, that's the one thing I would say for American men. You know, this is going to be another controversial thing. Don't be afraid to get a prenup. You know, and I know some Filipinas or someone are going to yell at me. Oh. Now listen. In the Philippines, if you know, it's different. You know, first, you can't get divorced in the Philippines, but Filipinos, you know, they really understand what happens. I mean, an older man could marry a younger woman and lose everything. And so there was this documentary. It was called, I'll have to look it up, but it was about this guy that used to arrange marriages in Mexico. He was an American. And he married the girl the second time, and she took everything, and he was like 65. And he wound up moving to Mexico to live because he lost everything. And I would just say, you know, I would get a prenup. Of course, in the will, I think the wife should get everything, but I think there should be a certain amount of time that goes to pass so he can protect his assets. I mean, where's he going to go? You know, if he gets divorced, you know, because he'll be kicked out of the house, well, what's going to happen? So, you know, if you're an older guy, I mean, this video is sort of meant for you. And I'm kind of going slow through this. But the fact of the matter is that because of the Filipino culture, the idea, you know, that they're going to, you know, this idea that they're going to get married for life, they take it seriously. Okay? They really do. The other thing, too, is they don't want to be an embarrassment to their family. Like getting a divorce. That would be hugely embarrassing. We forget that divorce in the U.S. used to be a hugely embarrassing thing. You know, it was like deemed as a failure. And so, you know, that's one thing I didn't see talked too much on the internet about. So Filipinas, you know, because they come from a loving background most of the time, they will fall in love with someone. Now, doesn't mean there's not going to be problems. Yeah, there'll be problems. We can talk about that in another video. But it can be real, okay? You just have to take your time and build that relationship and that trust. And so we have older men because they're lonely. We have younger women that maybe for financial reasons want to help themselves or family. They want to move to a more stable situation. They do it as well because they think of marriage as an institution, as a way of building their lives and building financial security. Okay? Sort of like traditional America did. So we have that all going on. But the one thing I will say, and we'll talk about this, you know, in another video, if you're an older man, I do ask for one thing. And that goes, and I don't care, you know, what they think or whatever. I think that you also have to be fair to the Filipina. And that you should not, you know, unless, you know, they're older or whatever, just treat them as your girlfriend. It's not the same status in the Philippines as it is in the U.S. They're not going to have a good reputation with their family or their neighborhood if they're just a girlfriend of a foreigner, okay? And so if you just want them as a girlfriend, then you should make that plain up front. But even if you say that, they're going to pay a heavy price if they're in the Philippines. Okay? They're going to hear from their parents. They're going to hear from their relatives. And it's going to make them feel bad because that's not their way their culture works. Okay? So I really hope that the older Americans who are living in the Philippines and those that travel there treat the Filipinas with respect. Don't go there and have a fling and then just go, well, it wasn't for me. No, please. You will ruin their lives, okay? If they're a very nice girl and were brought up in a proper family, they're going to be very, very hurt by this. And Filipinas are very sensitive. Filipinos are sensitive, but the Filipinas are sensitive people. And that's why they bond with people so well. They have an emotional connection. You will really hurt them very badly. Okay? So that's what I ask for. You know, just don't think they're an American girl that's going to go out there and have a good time and go home. And it's not a big deal. It will be a big deal for them. Okay? The second thing is, if you do get married to a Filipina, no matter what your age, you should plan on having children. Okay? If you're not going to have children, you should make that plain up front or marry an older Filipina. And that's what I was going to go through too. There's plenty of older Filipinas that are very attractive. You know, they're in their 40s and they're very beautiful women. So if you're an older man that doesn't want to have children or you want someone your own age, you can marry an older woman. And, you know, you can maybe have a better relationship because, you know, you're of the same age. You don't have to worry about having a family. And they'll be only too happy to get married as well. And I think that's one thing I think the older men need to look at is not marrying maybe a girl that's so young, but maybe one that's closer to their age in their 40s or 50s. You know, a lot of men, of course, want the younger woman, but because of, they're younger, I get, that's what it is. Let's be honest. But you might be safer and maybe have a better relationship with an older woman. Maybe you will. Now, if you're planning to have children, well, that's a different story. And that's what I'm talking about. If you get a younger Filipina and you're not going to have children, that's also going to be a problem for them. Okay? You know, many Americans are getting to that age where they're not old enough to remember. When I was younger, you'd hear all the time, hey, when is so-and-so going to have a kid? Hey, when are you going to have a family? Hey, when are you going to get married? You would hear these things all the time. And that was a way of the older generation sort of pushing you along. Nowadays, it's not done. It's viewed as an intrusion or whatever it is. But in the old days, that would happen. Well, in Filipino culture, they do that all the time. So if this girl gets married and she doesn't have a child, number one, for her family, it's kind of embarrassing for her. Second, they had been raised to have children. They come from big families. These women love children. And their dream is to have a family. If you rob them of that because you're an older man and don't want to have children, and I can think of a few people, that we have met over the years, the guy doesn't have children. These women, they go a little crazy because they've been raised to raise children and to work and have children. And when they have nothing to do, the relationship will turn sour. Okay? They want children. Unlike, in American or European culture or even Japanese culture and Asian culture now, most women don't want to have children. It's the opposite that you're going to find in the Philippines. So I hope that if you're an older man or any man or whatever, that if you're going to marry a Filipina, you make that clear up front and make it painfully clear if you don't want children. Okay? So I know, I hope this video has been illuminating. It is real. Younger Filipinas will marry older European or American men. They will stay with them. They will take care of them in their older years. They will do that. Will all of them do that? No, they won't. Will most of them do that? I think they will. Okay? I think they will. I've heard too many stories and seen too many things to say that it's just an internet rumor hoax, that we've got going on here. It's really, it's a real thing. It does happen. Like I said, for all those cultural reasons, financial reasons, and it does work. Okay, does it mean it's easy? No, it's not going to be easy. That's why maybe you want to marry an older Filipina. But if you're an older man that still wants to have a family, and a lot of them do, you see these men in their 60s having kids, hey, then you should, then you have to go with someone who's a little bit younger. But there are challenges involved with that. And of course, the families get involved. There's people that get upset about who's going to inherit what. So I would make all of those things clear, or map it out in your head, But it is possible. The Filipina wants to be married. They will marry an older man. Some of this, I've been thinking about this a long time. Some of this comes from Confucianism, where you honor and respect older people. And you say, well, the Philippines is Catholic. Yeah, but Confucianism, with all the Chinese that have come to the Philippines, it's in their culture. When they say kuya or ate, or, that means the elder, that's Confucianism, okay? They have that in their society. So they do respect older men, older people, older women, whatever have you. It's not disrespectful of them to marry someone older. Now, will people make fun of them? Yeah, they might. It's not their first choice to marry somebody older, but they will. And they can find that compromise to do that for all the reasons I have discussed. But like I said, I hope that the older Americans and the older Europeans respect the Filipino culture. And I hope that they marry these women or make it painfully clear to them that they're not going to marry them. Because, for the Filipino woman, the Filipina, they have a lot to lose. Not just emotionally, but, their reputation. And in a third world nation, in a poor country, they're very proud people, and reputation means a lot to them, especially with a family. So I hope you take that in consideration. And if you do, you will find a very loving, and beautiful wife. Take care, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Like and subscribe. Take care.